Welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. And my guest today is a book author, Sara Elizabeth Kellner, who just published her latest book, Victorian House Cats to Knit. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me.
And the first time I actually saw members of that book was at Vogue meeting last year. And you had the whole setup there. It was a whole room with a fireplace, and the cats were in every different position. And there was a cat and a cat who just caught a mouse or a rat, and there was like a cheese eating all kinds of different things. And I came back to that exhibition a number of times just because it was so inviting and so warm and so
thank you.
like back and like taking more pictures and discovering new things in that room all the time. Because like when you first glance at it, it's sort of like you just see all those cats, but then when you start paying attention, each of them is different. Before we start talking about cats, though, let's go back. Let's go back to like when it all started. You told me that your mom taught you how to knit when you were in fourth grade.
That's right. She wasn't a knitter at all. She had too many children. There were 8 kids in my family, so she didn't have time to do anything for herself. But she did know how to knit. And one day she must have told me that, and I must have thought it sounded fun because I kept pestering her to teach me. And one day she did on the front porch.
Do you remember like the first project that you knitted on those pencils?
Yes, it was on pencils. And, the funny thing is my mom didn't know how to cast off. She said she couldn't remember how to cast off. So I cast on and I just knit one long scarf for my brother. And it was, really ugly, bright colors that I just, I don't know, maybe more childish colors. But it was just really long. And because I didn't know how to cast off, because she'd never taught me, I just took the yarn and I just threaded it through the last row and I think tied it in a knot or something. But
hey, that worked.
After that, it was just doll blankets, I think, because I could only do in squares and only garter stitch. She didn't know anything else.
Well, that was before the world of YouTube. So how did you learn more about knitting?
Well, okay. So all I did was garter stitch, and I don't know, eventually someone must have taught me how to cast off. But after a few years of doing nothing else, I didn't knit anymore. I put it down and didn't pick it back up again until the internet and YouTube was around. And then everything I learned after that was just by watching. There used to be a website, I forget what it was called, maybe just Knitting Help or something like that. It wasn't videos when I first started. It was just a website, and they had really good photographs to show you how to do things. And I just taught myself everything.
Well, why animals? Like, why were you attracted to making animals?
Well, that's a great question, because when I picked it back up again in my 40s, I went back to making scarves again. Because it was just such a soothing thing to do. I was at a time in my life when I was feeling anxiety, and it was just so soothing. But I had a grandchild born. I think it was my first or second, and I wanted to knit him a toy. And before that, I thought, I never want to make a toy. Why would you do that? That's ridiculous. There's great toys in the store. But I thought it'd be nice to give him a handmade, hand knit gift. But there weren't any that attracted me. There just weren't any that appealed to me. And that's why I thought, well, I can do it myself. So I did. That's what got me started.
Well, how did you approach it? Like, did you sketch it? Did you have like a clear image in your head?
No, I didn't sketch at first. I have done that since then a little bit, but no, I just had an image. Actually, what I would do is look at a picture of an animal, either online or just a picture that I had, or one of my own animals, and just keep staring and just try to make it exactly like what I saw.
Can you draw? Like, are you good at
A
drawing?
little bit. A little bit. I did draw some when I was younger, and I loved painting always. I still like to paint sometimes. Yeah, that's how I did it. And I think I told you that I'd knit one toy from somebody's pattern, but I hadn't even looked at any other toy patterns at all. So I don't know. And I still to this day don't know how other toy designers, really good ones, there's great ones out there, construct their projects. I really don't know, because I've been told you do things so differently. And I'm like, oh, okay. Some people will say, I've been knitting for years and I don't know what you're talking about. But then I tell them, then they're like, oh, okay. So I think I'm a little bit different techniques.
Well, when you looked at other people patterns for those animals and you didn't see anything you like, what were you looking for?
Realism. There's awful cute things out there, but I wanted something that looked real. And at that time, there's more designers now that do that. But at that time, I don't remember seeing any. Yeah, that's just what I thought. And then once I did my first one, I never, ever wanted to do anything else. And I think I've knit a few, maybe socks or a couple things since then, but mostly I've just focused on toys and designing my own toys.
And it's interesting because like when people think of knitting, they thinking about it in like more practical terms, right? Like you're making something to keep you warm, you're making something to wear, like the hats, the mittens, whatever, sweaters.
Mm-hmm.
To decide to go just toys route, it's more of an artistic approach in my view.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I guess it is.
Do you see yourself as an artist?
Yeah, I do. I do. I say it hesitatingly because no one's really asked me that before. But I think when it gets down to it, yeah, I do.
When you decided to start the first book, it was different kinds of animals. Mm-hmm. There were like bisons and there were like all squirrels. Like I can't remember. I think there was like bunnies and so like more of a life. How did you decide on that collection? How did you decide like who is going to make the cut into the book?
Yeah, the book before this one, it was called Wild and Woolly. And okay, so in my heart, I love all animals. I love them all equally, from frogs to cats to horses. I really do. I have a love for them. And I think they have souls like we do. And so I don't discriminate. And it's not that I thought, what will people want to knit? I kind of just like, what am I interested in? So with that first book, or the Wild and Woolly, I was trying to think globally, animals from different parts of the world. So I just, what am I interested in? And what animal do you find here and here and here? That's kind of how that book was put together. And I don't know if you've looked through it or seen it at all, but it's really a unique book because my son did the illustrations in there. There's beautiful artwork and my daughter had a hand in it too. So it was a family project.
Does your family think you eccentric?
I don't think so. I wouldn't use that word. They know that I love to knit and they know I spend a lot of time knitting. No, I don't think so, because they're that way too. I think we're a little bit, they say people with ADHD can be hyper-focused. So some of my children are like that too. They will focus in on their craft or their hobby. And I'm proud of that in me and in them. I think it's fine.
When you said you knit a lot, how much are we talking about?
There are times when it is every day. And there are times when I get up at the crack of dawn and knit till midnight, especially if I've got a deadline for a book or just a personal deadline, But then, everybody has things come up in their life, and there's sometimes I'll go a long time without knitting. So it just depends. Yeah.
You miss it when you don't knit? Like, is that on your mind?
Yes, I do. That's a great question. I do.
Well, being a designer, like, are you always thinking about the next thing?
Oh, yes. Yes, I want to tell you, like, even right now, I've got always, since I started designing, I have had, I feel like hundreds of ideas. And when I'm able to, I just can't do it fast enough. That's how I feel. So the books, they did help me to alleviate some of those ideas out of my brain, but I have a lot more.
Do you keep a diary of them?
So when I first write a pattern, I handwrite it, and I have all of those handwritten patterns in notebooks. So in a way, with some sketching and with sometimes like personal things written in there too, doctor's appointments or whatever. So that's kind of like a diary. Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
Well, when I looked at your book, The Victorian House Cats to Knit, there is a story about every cat. It's not just the pattern.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite part. My husband says, well, you ought to just write a book, because I did enjoy the writing as well. It's fun. I didn't like Wild and Woolly. I didn't just want to write a knitting book again. I don't ever want to just write a book of patterns. I want to make it more. So, and I love history. I'm all about history. And especially I'm interested in the 1800s, in the Victorian period. I spend a lot of time thinking about history. And I love fictionalizing things. So I came up with this family, and I thought, let's do a cat for every room in their house, a member of the family, and just put a little, I call them character sketch, put a little character sketch in. And I think it just makes it more fun for the knitter too, right? Hopefully.
I mean, do you think like you'll spend a lot of time in your imaginary world, like in that Victorian era?
You know what? When I was writing this book, yes, I sure did. And I loved it. I loved it. It's like the people in the family, this is going to sound crazy, they became real for me. Like, I can really imagine them and, living in their house, walking around their house. I know that's silly, but people who are really writers, really real authors, I'll bet they get so immersed that it's hard for them to live in their own life again. I can imagine, because it was a little bit of a shift for me, even just this little knitting book.
Right. No, I don't think it's silly at all. I find myself like reading a book, I often find myself living with those characters, like if it's a good book, right? If it sucks you in. And I have hard time withdrawing from the book. And like when people come, the real life, and I'm like, but I'm there, right? Like
You're right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I used to do a lot of reading, and that would happen to me too.
Well, I think people who read your book, they're gonna get that feeling too. They're gonna get immersed in that family, because there is like a cat that lives in the kitchen, and then there is a cat who like stretches on the porch. And how did you have any problem with like, or maybe this cat shouldn't be stretching on the porch, maybe he should be stretching someplace else? Like, how difficult was to decide? Like,
that was so easy. I have a cat, she's sleeping right over there. And so I looked at what she did and where she did it. And it just, that was easy. That wasn't difficult at all.
Are you happy that you did it in Victorian times?
Very, even so much so that I would consider doing another book. Maybe even with the same family. I don't know. I've actually been thinking, about a next book. I haven't started yet, and I have different ideas. And my publisher has ideas of what would do well. But I really feel like I have to keep it in my heart, something that I love and enjoy inside, because if not, it won't be my best work. And since I love history, I think I would like to stay in that mode. Maybe not Victorian, but something to do with a reality in the past.
Cat is a cat, right? The cat today looks the same like it was back in Victorian times. How much is it important for you to have that feel of them in that environment back in the Victorian times? Do you think it affects like their facial expression? So something about that cat makes it uniquely Victorian.
No, no, I think you were right when you said they've always looked the same and done the same things. I'm looking at my cats I have right here. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And aren't there cats in the old Egyptian the hieroglyphs or whatever they're called? I don't know. It seems like they had cats and they probably did the same stretching and poses that they do today.
Well, when you think about toys, right? Like we're thinking often that the kids are going to pick up that toy and like play with it. And yet yours are set in certain position, right? Like you have them in period of time in the moment. So whether it's the cat stretching on the porch or whether it's a cat who is like on its back with the paws up, it's position. Like, do you think that makes it not a toy?
No. There are some toy designers that knit, you can tell they're just meant to be held and cuddled and loved and toys. And then there's other toy designers, awesome ones, that you can tell really they're just knitting for the things to sit on a shelf. I like to think that my designs can be either or. So yeah, they can be cuddled in a bed or sit on a shelf, and either way they'll do just fine. Right. I don't think I'd wash them though.
Well, talking about sitting on the shelf, you mentioned to me that when you're done with creating a toy, you put it in the guest bedroom, and when you leave the guest bedroom, you're sure that they're talking about you, that there's happening. Do you talk to the toys when you make them? Do you connect with them? Do you think that
a little bit? You know what? I do it once usually the head is one of the last things that I do on the animal. And until I get to that point, there's no conversation. But once I've made their face and their head and their face, I'm like, hello, hi, it's nice to meet you. So yeah, then I do connect, but I named the pattern, but I've never given like a personal name, Charlie or something. I don't go that far with it.
I've done a few amigurumi toys, and when people think about toys, it's more often crochet than knitting. It's hard to really find knitted toys, and the face is always the hardest. Like I once knitted the sheep that turn up looking like an angry monkey just because of facial expressions. And I mean, honestly, like I tried my best, but it was like no fixing it. Do you ever get frustrated with like what you're trying to portray and what the reality is?
Oh, all the time. Yes. Constantly. Probably for every 1 hour of productive designing, there are 3 or 4 hours of heaps of yarn that I've ripped out on the floor. Yeah, I get real frustrated and just do my best, but it's just my method is trial and error, and so you just can't avoid that. But you mentioned faces. That is hard. I've got a cat here. Can I grab it and show you? So I try to I keep my faces as simple as possible, just for that reason. See, it's just the as far as the embroidery, the eyes are just 2 little slits. And I just stick on a nose and some whiskers. You know, I don't want to do a complicated face because then it's too difficult.
What do you use for whiskers?
You can buy them on Etsy, fake whiskers.
Who knew?
Yeah, you can buy everything. You can buy eyes, nose, and you know, I have this cat, so every now and then I'll find one of her whiskers, and I always put it aside thinking I'm going to use it, and by the time I need it, I never have it anymore. But yeah, you can buy all that on Etsy.
Because I do find my cat's whiskers all the time. So
I also find my cat's claws. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, they shed their claws at some point. Like I find them on my bed usually. And the comforters. So
yeah.
So when you think about the next book, are you thinking like, I'm trying to understand the way your mind works. Like, is there like a theatrical performance? Are you thinking about like the setup for the next book?
Well, you know, like I said, I haven't hit on a theme yet. I thought I knew what I was going to do, but my heart wasn't 100% in it, like I was saying. I'm very, very interested in the old textile mills and textile factories. I might be using the wrong words, I'm not sure, but that era, early US, and that, the people that worked hard and suffered. And I'm very interested in that. I'm also interested in the tenement housing in New York City. I love that. So I've been trying really hard to come up with an idea for some animals that would fit into one of those scenarios. And I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever be able to do that. But since you asked, those are the themes that are running in my mind right now.
Somehow like mice come to mind.
Right. I've thought about that one. But then, you get stuck. There's really nothing. So that's when my husband was right. Just write a book. You don't have to knit, but I love knitting. I want to knit. I want to somehow involve knitting in this.
I saw that you've done like mini versions of the big knitted animals. Like there is a mini cat on your Ravelry. And by the way, if you guys want to try something, there is 144 patterns on Ravelry.
Oh, is there that many? Yeah, there's two minis, a mini parlor cat or they're called tiny parlor cat and tiny window cat. And they're in the book. They're in the Victorian book. So they're on Ravelry. Yes, there are 5 patterns from the book that I've self-published on Ravelry. So people can go there and get those 5 by themselves if they want to.
But have you ever thought about making something even smaller? Like I know you have some bug collection and some fruits and vegetables. I'm thinking like fleas. Oh
my gosh. No, I've never thought of that. I'm going to be honest with you here. No.
There's a Russian folk tale about one artisan who put the shoe horse on a flea. You could only see it through the looking glass. So
fun. That sounds that you make it sound a little more appealing, but no, I've never thought about doing a flea. I'd have to blow it up. And I've done that before with bugs and things, like you said, but haven't thought about fleas. Of course, they would go with the cats, wouldn't they? I could have designed one to go in this book.
Houses. When you think about next projects, are you always thinking in terms of collections?
Yeah, no. I started out up until 3 or 4 years ago I had one book back about 10 years ago and didn't have another till a few years ago. But when I first started, I never thought of collection. I just thought of individual patterns. But then at some point I realized, okay, I'm either doing, and that's when I created bundles on Ravelry. At some point I realized, okay, these are what I really like doing the most. And so I'll probably make things that fit into these bundles. But I didn't think in terms of collections until I did the Wild and Woolly and then the Victorian house cats.
Right. Yeah. I saw that you made the mermaid. Have you considered the collection of mystical creatures?
Oh, no, not until this moment.
And I know that you're going for the realistic world, right. But it can be a realistic looking dragon.
Right. There are some awesome toy designers who do dragons and mermaids, and yeah, they're beautiful, but it's not my heart. I did the mermaid and that was fun, but I do like real animals. And I just feel like if I'm going to give it my all, I want to give what I love the most. So
is there an animal that you always wanted to knit but sort of didn't get to it yet?
Good question. I have a special fondness for horses. When I first started designing a long time ago, I did do a hobby horse, but that's not what I'm talking about. I would be honored to do a beautiful horse someday. But to be honest with you, I don't know how to start. I don't know how I would do it with those 4 skinny legs. It would have to be I don't know if I could do it as realistic as I wanted to.
Do you use wire in your toys?
Not usually. Once in a while, not for the cat book, not at all. In the Wild and Woolly, I had wire. I think there was a rabbit with ears that stuck up, and I can't think right now, but a couple others. But I always tell people, if you're going to give it to a child, don't worry about wires. Take the wires out. That's just for if you're going to set it on a shelf. But I normally don't, and I try not to. I don't like that, you know. So when I bring my animals, like you saw them at Vogue, I did stick some double pointed needles up into the cat legs just because I knew they were going to be held a lot and petted, and I didn't want them to fall over. So sometimes I'll support them in that way. But usually I try to design them where they're shaped on their own and I don't have to worry about supports.
You mentioned to me that sometimes people say, like, did that animal just move and give you like that look? Do you ever think that they moved?
Well, no, but it's fun to pretend.
Do you think there is still that kid in you that enjoys it so much?
Oh, yes. Yes. And that was, you know, when I was a kid, my mom taught me to use my imagination and creativity, right? And so she would pretend we had some woods behind our house, and she would pretend there were these little elves, she called them, that lived up there. So yeah, I keep that in my mind, and I also pretend with these animals I'm making. It's just fun. It helps me to bring them to life.
Well, the thing is, like, being a designer, there is this fine line of going with what your heart desires and making it so that others can do the same. And the easier something is, the more people can make it. Mm-hmm. How do you make that decision of like how complicated something is going to be, how complicated the pattern is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question. And I love that you realize that that's something that designers think about, especially toy designers, maybe, because I think about that all the time when I'm designing. I don't want to make something too hard, but I want it to look real. That's exactly right. So how do I do it? I just keep it in my mind. And every step, okay, is this something that they're going to find too complicated? Yes, rip it out. Okay, is this something that looks real? No, rip it out. Oh, okay, this is easier. I think people can do this if I'm real careful with how I say it. So, okay, I'll leave that in. That it's always in my mind. And people don't think about that. I think you're the first person who's ever really asked me about that. But that's very real.
Well, when you write that pattern, did you like get it by now? Like, do you know exactly how to write the pattern? Is it easy now to write the pattern?
It was always easy. I never found it hard. I just put down what I was doing. But again, I think I do it differently than others. I think I word things differently because I've never gone and looked at any other patterns. I just put it down and try to word it. They're very wordy. My patterns can have paragraphs in them. I don't like that. I try to cut them back as much as possible, but sometimes it's just necessary to try and tell someone how to do what I'm doing.
Have you ever considered starting a YouTube channel and doing tutorials and showing people how to do things?
Good. That's good. I've considered it. I don't know that I'd be very good at it. Honestly, I don't know.
I had a guest on my channel, Michelle Driver, and she is a tapestry artist. And she has a video on YouTube called "Every Artist Should Have a YouTube Channel."
I do think it would help. You know what I would really like? I would really like it if someone said, let me do that for you. Because then I could get the help out there. And it would be someone who could do it better than me. I don't know. Maybe someday I can do that. I would love to be able to help people. maybe someday I'll have the time to do that.
And my children came very helpful when I asked them about the YouTube channel.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
Sometimes kids come handy, you know.
How old are your kids?
I have 20, almost 28, almost 26, and 18-year-old.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say little ones, like maybe middle school or something.
Nope. They are officially empty nesters now.
Oh, wow.
What's your dream or ambition for your design career? Do you have an ambition?
No, I don't. I just want to I just want to love it. I want to keep loving what I'm doing. I don't have a goal. I used to think, okay, I want to do a book, and it was fun. And, if I still do another book, it'll be fun again, but I don't have ambitions and goals. I just want to keep on enjoying it. And if I'm not ever enjoying it, I'll just stop and go on to something else. But I doubt that'll ever happen.
Well, one of the things we talked about before we started the interview was about social media. And there are a lot of designers who absolutely despise the idea that they have to be on social media, but it's like a necessary evil. What's your relationship with social media?
Same. It's fun, but I would rather I want to sit in a chair and knit all day, and not have to worry about social media. I don't despise it, I don't hate it, but I wish I could just be designing and not have to think about that.
And there would be some AI robot just posting those cats and
oh, right. Yeah, no, that won't happen.
Well, how much do you like to control the process? Like when it comes to book writing or when it comes to like other people helping you, like are you a control freak?
Probably so. I think yes, one of the people that was, one of the people that work for the publisher, they get a little frustrated with me, I think, because when they're doing the layout on the inside, I'm like, no, I want spaces here, and I want the font this, and I had a real vision in my mind, and for this book, I wanted it to look like an old book from the 1800s. I don't care that there's not full page glossy photographs. I even wanted old paper. I didn't want the modern, but anyway, I had to make concessions on some things. But I did try to get in there as much as I could and say what I wanted. Yeah.
So when I interviewed Stockpole Production, I actually asked them, the editors, and about how frustrating it is for them, right?
Oh.
The funny part that they want to preserve your character. They want to show your personality in the book. So it's for them, it's also for you, it's the balance of not losing your voice and
right.
your vision. But for them, it's also the balance of like trying to convince you how to make it shorter, probably.
Yes.
Not losing your voice there either, because that's what sells, that's what makes it unique, right? So I think they're on your side with that.
Oh, yeah, they're great. They really are great. I'm not just saying that. I've had great experiences both times. You want me to show you the cats I brought down?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I showed you this one already a second ago. This is I want to get it real. This is the porch cat. So it's supposed to look like he's stretching. And this is called Aunt Prue's Persian. So I tried to use a fuzzy yarn there.
She definitely looks fluffy and luxurious.
Yeah. I knit this one up real quick for Halloween the other day, but he's called the Gentleman's Ginger. And so in the book, he's all ginger colored.
When you said like I need it really quickly, like how quickly are we talking about? How quick can you whip up one of those?
If I start in the morning and work till night, I can do it in one day. Wow. One solid day with, bathroom breaks and eating breaks, and that's about all.
Right.
But normally I don't get that opportunity. I did happen to the other day, but normally, you know, I've got a lot of family that live around me, which is awesome. And so they're in and out and I don't get that chance. Normally it would take 2 or 3 days. Yeah. I have one more here. The fireplace cat. Can't really see it very well.
Do you ever part with them, or do you keep them for yourself?
No, I part with them for sure because I wouldn't have room in my house for everything. So at Vogue Knitting, some years I will sell them when I'm through with it, and some years I hang on to them. But that's the only place I've ever sold them. But yeah, I have to. I also give them away.
Is it hard to price it, because it's like, you know, they're like very good at figuring out the salary for the regular jobs, but when it comes to needs, it's hard to put the value on your work.
I had last year when I was selling them, I had them priced probably about a third of what I ended up pricing them, and I kept having people walk by saying, "You need to raise those prices." I mean, over and over again. So I finally did, and they still sold. So yeah, I mean,
lesson learned.
Yeah.
Are you planning to be there again next year?
Yes, I am. I'm excited. And it'll be the same setup since the books weren't available last year in January, and they are now. Well, I say that. Yesterday was my official release day, but there were so many pre-orders that the book is already, their supply is depleted on Amazon and everywhere else I looked last night. So it's going to be a few weeks, and I'm embarrassed, and I feel bad for the people who, I even had one girl this morning tell me she pre-ordered and on Amazon, and they still told her it's going to be 3 more weeks. So I don't know what happened. I'm not really sure, but I'm sorry to the people that didn't get their books when they wanted to, and it shouldn't be much longer.
That's such a wonderful problem to help.
Yeah. It is. I just feel bad.
I can't wait to see you again at Vogue, and I just saw you back, and you were busy with those books, and people were stopping and touching those cats and taking pictures with them, and it was really lovely to chat with you there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being my guest today. It was so lovely to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, you too. I was so pleased that you had asked me to be on your show, and honored that you would want me to be. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, absolutely. Thank you.